Rabbi, can I make a comment?
Sure.
Yeah, the last thing that I wrote yesterday was that if you take food without the blessing, you're stealing from God.
Right.
And I thought that was it's a terrible thing, but it's a beautiful observation. And
Yeah.
it
Thank you.
really got me. And now
Yeah.
every time I start to make food, I start singing the brocha, but it doesn't make sense because I'm not singing the right one, but I know in my head, for some reason, I always was doing that
Uh-huh.
from the time I
Uh-huh.
was little. Anyway,
Well,
I grew up
Susan, two things. First of
half,
all, in those packages, we included a little sheet of the blessings for food.
yes,
So number one, you might want to keep that handy. Second thing is that in the Siddur, after the morning prayers, it has a list of blessings with a little detail. And so if you check out in the Siddur, in the prayer book, after the morning prayers, you'll see a number of pages on a variety of blessings, and
okay.
it should help you
Thank
know which blessing it is. It's a great mitzvah to say a blessing before eating anything, or there are
Especially
other blessings.
it would be nice if it was the right, correct one. That's
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You should say the right one. Yeah.
my
In
homework.
fact, that's what our whole Talmudic study here is all trying to figure out, if we're doing the right blessing,
Shoulders in the picture.
saying it right or not. So, for
Rabbi?
sure. Yes.
I always thought that dates, being that they grow on a palm tree, which is similar to other adama, because it's a monocat, and it's like, you might have a pineapple or a banana. I always thought the decal, the palm, was adama, and yesterday I learned that it was 8.
Right, right. I think what you're confusing it with maybe is hearts of palm. Hearts of palm are not the fruit of the tree. And
That's
because
right.
of that, the hearts of palm should not be ha'etz. Because ha'etz, beirei pri ha'etz, you make the blessing ha'etz on the fruits of the tree. But there are other parts of the tree that are sometimes edible, like hearts of palm.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's berries that are not the main fruit as well. And therefore you gotta, so you gotta be knowledgeable in the trees. Like I'm not sure about capers. Is capers the fruit of the tree, or is that just a berry, but there's really a different fruit? I'm not
Good
so familiar. We need to go back to the old days when we would have live on farms. Nowadays we don't know anything. We don't even know, you don't know if some company is producing apples or if they actually grow on a tree. Especially now with the genetically modified foods, you never know what's going on. Is this created in some factory?
Well, corn and soy, which I believe are both adama, they are GMO now in this country.
Right.
So I don't eat them now.
Right. That's true. Those are the two worst GMOs, is the corn and the and beets. I think beets also.
But unfortunately, we give that to our birds.
I didn't know about beets.
Sugar is all GMO. Yeah.
Oh my God.
No more sugar, huh? Okay.
Well, I don't eat it anyway.
Okay, let's see. We are holding on page Yud Beis Amud Aleph, page 12a. And the Gemara that we learned yesterday, I followed the way Rashi understood the Gemara. And I didn't want to confuse you, but there is another way of learning the Gemara as well. So now that we know more or less Rashi's explanation, maybe today I'll just mention to you the idea of the Rif's way of understanding the Gemara. So let's go over Rashi's way. The Gemara started with the case where a person is holding a cup of wine and he thinks it is beer, and he starts reciting a bracha, and he says Hashem's name, and he says Hashem's name, and he thinks that it's beer, and then he realizes that it's wine. So he concludes it correctly with wine, the Borei Pri Hagafen. And the Gemara said that case is obvious that he has fulfilled his obligation. And what was the reason? Why is it obvious? If you thought to say Shahakol, and in the end you corrected it and said the Borei Pri Hagafen, for sure you have fulfilled your obligation. Why is that?
Because you made the correction.
Well, not really. There are cases where you correct and it's not good enough. Some cases where you correct things in the end, we're not, or we're not 100% sure if it's good enough. But this case, we're sure that it's good. In other words, the Gemara's question is, the Gemara is wondering about when you say Hashem's name, is that also a major factor in having the right intent when you say Hashem's name? And therefore, maybe it doesn't just go by how you end it. It might also go by what you had in mind when you said Hashem's name. But the Gemara says this case, even though you had the wrong thing in mind when you said Hashem's name, it's for sure going to be good. It's for sure you fulfilled the obligation. Yes, Ben. Why is it? Why have you for sure fulfilled the obligation?
Because I think Shahakol includes everything. So
That's
if you
correct.
start with Hakol, whatever you end it with, the correct one is correct.
Right. So in this case, Susan, it's not that you're wrong. It's just that the Gemara is in the midst of deciding. That's not clear if it just goes by the end. So we can't say that that's the reason it's definite, because it's not definite. In other words, you might be right that it goes by the end. If you correct it, it's good. But the Gemara is in the midst of deciding and trying to figure out, is that good enough if you end it that way? But the Gemara, even before it has the conclusion, and it doesn't have a conclusion, but even before that, the Gemara says, this thing is obvious. This, we do have a conclusion. We know this is going to work. And what is the case where we know it's going to work? Where you had in mind Shahakol and you concluded with the correct bracha. And the reason why it works is because even Shahakol was actually okay. You would have fulfilled the obligation even if you did a Shahakol. Yes, Robert.
I just, in that vein of thought, if I understand correctly, if you make a mistake in, again, thinking, a drink or a food is one thing, but it's another, to be able to sort of part of the salvation is at the very end to make sure you say Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. I mean, that's sort of the ending you have to have, irrespective of the confusion, the thought of having beer or wine or date or whatever. But if it's not complete with the last phrase, then I guess it's not a stated blessing, or that is acceptable ending, if I make myself clear.
I'm not really sure what you meant, because you said that you end Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. That's not part of a regular blessing, the Shema. The Shema we say in the morning and in the evening, but we don't say that when we say blessing.
Okay, but again, in saying I remember there was some confusion somewhere, maybe in my mind, that we do the Shema, but if we don't add the last phrase, then it's incomplete, and as if it doesn't count.
Oh, okay. Well, you're saying that the Hashem Echad is a very important part.
Yes.
Yes.
Did we talk about that here in our class
Yeah, we did a
Miranda?
couple of days ago.
About Hashem Echad?
No.
We talked
Well-
about Melech HaOlam.
Melech
Melech
Haolam.
haolam, yes.
Okay.
Which then led
Now,
to.
now I'm understanding, right?
Okay,
Melech Haolam.
Yeah.
So, we'll see about Melech Haolam a little further in the Gemara, right? So when you say the Melech Haolam, okay, good point. You know, I'll tell you something interesting. You bringing up the Melech Haolam part. There is a question. We say the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah blessing, and if you look at that blessing, it doesn't say Melech Haolam, and we know that our Gemara here says. And that's the halacha that you need to say Melech HaOlam for a bracha to be a blessing. It needs to have Melech HaOlam.
right.
So the commentaries on the Talmud, they ask this question: how do you say a bracha? The most important bracha of the davening is the Amidah bracha, and it doesn't even have Melech HaOlam, and it shouldn't even be called a blessing. So the commentaries say when you say that Elokei Avraham, when you say it's the God of Abraham, and Abraham was the one who revealed to the world, was Mefarsim. He spread the word that Hashem, he publicized that Hashem is king over the world. So that means Melech HaOlam. So when you say Elokei Avraham, God, the God of Abraham, you're actually saying a bracha, that's the Melech HaOlam part. Even though we don't use the same words, we don't say the word Melech HaOlam, but it is considered the Melech HaOlam. So anyway, so thanks, Robert, for bringing this up about the Melech HaOlam, and that is something that we're going to say in a few minutes because it's brought in a little later. But the main point here is what Ben just said about the when you make a mistake. So it's not really a mistake unless it's totally wrong. If it's okay, then it's not a major mistake. So shahakol is a blessing that's like a master key. It's doable for any door. The shahakol is doable for any of the cases. It's not the perfect key for the blessings. It's much better to be more individualized, specific, thanking Hashem for the specific quality that you want to thank Hashem for, and not just to say in general, shahakol, everything is created from Hashem's word, but it's more honorable to Hashem to specify the blessing. But shahakol works. And once it works, it's not a total mistake. And therefore, the blessing, shahakol, if you make a mistake and you have in mind shahakol, and then you do the more correct blessing, that's for sure going to be fine, because even your mistake was not a real mistake. It's only it's only a partial mistake. You could have gotten away with it. It's not a total mistake. But then the Gemara says the opposite case is a problem, because if you said Borei Pri Hagofen, the blessing for wine, on beer, that would be a total mistake. And therefore, if you had in mind for the blessing on wine, and then you realize it's beer and you said the right bracha on the beer, that's where the Gemara is wondering, what will the halacha be? Do you need to repeat the bracha, or is it good the way it is? And then the Gemara tried to bring proofs. And the Gemara tried to bring 3 proofs, and each one was we weren't able to completely prove anything from. So the Gemara ended off without a clear answer. We don't really know what the din is, what the halacha is. Did you fulfill the mitzvah or not? If you had in mind initially to say the blessing on the wine, and you concluded with beer. And what were the 3, what were the proofs? So the first proof was that in the case of the Shema blessings, we said that the morning blessing, you started saying, you had in mind to say the morning blessing, but you concluded with the wrong blessing, the evening blessing. That we said is for sure not good. But if you had in mind to start with the evening blessing and you concluded with the morning blessing, that is yotze, that you fulfilled. And so we seem to think from that point of the Gemara, from that brisa, that statement, it seemed to be a good proof that everything goes by how you end it. As long as you correct it in the end, right? That's what it sounds like is fine. You correct it in the end. And then the Gemara said, no, it's not a good proof. Why not? Because this is just like the Shahakol case. This is just like the previous case. The reason it's good in this case is because even your mistake was not a real mistake. Because even if you said the Ma'ariv Aravim part, if you said that evening part, that part is not really wrong. It's not really wrong because you're supposed to mention the night by the day and the day by the night, and that blessing has both. So it's not totally wrong. And therefore, you fulfilled your obligation. As long as you end it right, you have to end it properly. But having in mind the wrong part is not totally wrong. There is an argument among the commentaries if reciting the wrong blessing, for example, during the daytime, if you said the Ma'ariv Aravim blessing, and then you ended it correctly, you ended it Yoitzer Hama'oros. What actually is the halacha? If you actually said the wrong bracha, you said Hama'ariv Aravim in the morning, which is the evening blessing you said in the morning, in the day, and you concluded it with the right thing. You concluded it Yoitzer Hama'oros. So there's two opinions. One opinion says it's fine, and it seems like that's the way they understand this Gemara. The other opinion says, no, it's okay. You didn't interrupt, but you still will need to say, you could say the Ma'ariv Aravim. You said that whole bracha, but don't just conclude Yoitzer Hama'oros. Now do the whole morning part. Start, recite the whole morning blessing and then finish Yoitzer HaMa'aris, because you're skipping the main part. It's not an interruption, but it's not a full complete. It's not really fully the proper blessing. It's not wrong. It's okay, but it's also you missed out in some of the blessings. So there's an argument among the commentaries if that, to what extent is this good? When you say the evening part, you have in mind the evening part. Is that totally good? Or do you really need to also make up and recite the morning part of that blessing? So there is an argument among the commentaries there. Just want to mention that. And then the Gemara said, so this was not a good proof. Then the Gemara said that I'm sorry, I skipped one point. Let me go back. So the Gemara wanted to prove from here that it goes back after the end. And then the Gemara said that here you ended off correctly, because here the Gemara said you could say that here you end off, since there's a full blessing at the end. So here it's not even a question. For sure you fulfilled it because you ended off right. And then the Gemara said that only goes according to the opinion that that would only work if you say that saying Hashem's name is good enough. But if you need to say Melech HaOlam, then it's not a real blessing at the end. So on that, the Gemara said this point of the fact that you mention day and night by day, and therefore it's considered a kosher blessing. The blessing was fulfilled. Okay. So then the Gemara said we wanted to prove from the we tried to prove from the point at the end where it said everything goes by the conclusion, and what would that case be adding to our knowledge if it clearly says a rule, a general rule, everything goes after the conclusion? So it would seem that you see if you recited the wrong bracha, you had in mind wine and you ended up reciting the bracha on beer. So it would seem that it's okay. Everything goes by the conclusion. You said the right thing in the end. The Gemara says, no, that's telling us about a certain case. What is that telling us? Telling us about a case where you recited the bracha on you ate dates and you thought it was bread, and because you thought it was bread, you started reciting the after blessing on bread, but then you ended up reciting the after blessing on dates. And here the Gemara says that you have fulfilled your obligation.
Okay.
And the reason here why it works is because even if you concluded the bracha on bread, it would have been a fulfillment of the obligation, because dates are satisfying. Dates are, they give mozoin, they give sustenance, they're sustaining food, and therefore you would have fulfilled your obligation. And therefore, even though it's a mistake, but it's a mistake that's really not a full-fledged mistake, and therefore it's okay. So I guess we should really call this 2 proofs, not 3. It's really 2 times the Gemara tries to prove, well, this first case, the Gemara went back and forth. So, but it's really 2 sources. We tried to bring from 2 sources that it's an answer to our question, and we don't have a full-fledged answer because the Gemara proves wrong both of these answers. Now, there is another way of reading this Gemara. The other way of reading the Gemara is not that you had in mind the wrong intention, but that you actually started saying the wrong bracha. You actually started saying the wrong bracha, and then you corrected yourself. If you start saying the wrong bracha and then correct yourself, the Gemara is asking, is that okay? Can you correct yourself? Can you correct yourself from saying the wrong bracha and fixing it? And you actually said the wrong thing, but you're correcting it. You're correcting it afterwards. And the Gemara continued. The Gemara tries to bring a proof. In the way they understand the proof is also a case where you actually started saying the wrong bracha and then you corrected it. And that would be the cases that we're talking about. But in any event, we mentioned yesterday that there are 2 ways of learning. The final conclusion would be, on the one hand, blessings are rabbinic, and therefore you can be lenient. On the other hand, eating food without a blessing is stealing. So that's like a biblical law. You have to be strict. So there were 2 ways of seeing what the conclusion should be, because it is rabbinic, but it also is connected to a biblical law. Now, we are going to continue with the next Gemara, but if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to ask on the previous Gemara. Any questions? Yes, Howard.
Maybe not
yes.
directly on the Gemara, but so just in general, if you don't know what bracha to say, I've heard it said that if you don't know what bracha to say shahakol. And I've also heard it say that that's not actually correct. Can you please enlighten me?
So the exemption, the option of saying shahakol is supposed to be used when there is a halachic reason why it's unclear. In other words, the Talmud says, you don't know which bracha to say, go study. Go to the Levi Yitzchak Senior Academy and you'll study which bracha, right? But you shouldn't. That's not an excuse. You don't know what bracha. But what happens if it's unclear in halacha what bracha to say? Then then you can. Then there is the shahakal option, where it's unclear.
Okay,
Uh,
so I presume in most cases it's not unclear.
Right.
So if you don't know, look it up.
You should look it up. Now, there are a lot of books that have the a list of food items, and but it's not always so simple. Like granola, it's a big question if granola would be mezainis or hadama. That would be like an example of a case. The truth is, there are fruits that it's unclear, are they considered vegetables or fruits? Bananas are in that category. Papayas, these are fruits that are they're sort of like trees, but they have elements of vegetables to them, and therefore they the bracha that we would recite would be the Boirei Pri Ho'adama, because that's more inclusive than the fruit bracha.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, the papaya. Banana, I was always fairly certain was Adama because of the way it grows. But the papaya, when we were thinking about the dates, since it's the way it grows is similar and it seems to be a fruit and it's got a lot of seeds, that's what put the Shiloh in my mind,
Right.
even though I
Phyllis,
always thought of papaya as a Adama.
You're going to help us when we get to the 6th chapter, and we're going to need to know someone who understands the way the trees grow. Sounds like you have some knowledge in that, and you see how they grow, so you're going to help us out. But it's going to be a little while. You might have to stick with us for about 8 months, and we'll get to hopefully the 6th
What bracha
chapter.
do you use for papaya, Rabbi?
Ha'adama.
Adama. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Then
But
I
I'm
haven't.
talking about to understand the reason for it. We want to know what the reason is. Yes, Ben.
It grows. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
We
certain things.
Well,
also,
in my mind,
Certain things grow differently, and also does it have to be replanted every year? Does half of the tree fall off and it grows again?
Oh,
There are certain parts of it, but when we get to the 6th chapter, that's really where it talks about the blessings on fruits and vegetables. Yes, Ben. Ben.
we also talked previously or yesterday about the blessing, Shema blessing, which in the morning you say, Yoter Or Uborech Choshech.
Yeah.
So it really not a mistake because you include both of them in the blessing.
It's not a complete mistake,
Then
right?
evening and you're doing the morning. Right. But today you didn't mention it, so I'm thinking, is that still a relevant thing?
I did mention that about the morning and the evening. That if you said the bracha in the morning, Yotzer Hama'iris,
Yes,
I mentioned a few, yeah. It was mentioned in our discussion now.
It was mentioned Bekesher Lachitum, but not to the.
No, we said it's inclusive. It talks about day and night. Yeah. No, we did mention that it talks about day and night in it. Maybe I said it in English. You want me to say it in the Hebrew? Ben, I said it in the English. I said that it mentions the day and the night. But if for you, I'll say Yotzer Or Uborei Choshech. Golel Or B'nei Choshech. Okay. So now we've fulfilled it. Okay, now we're going to continue with the next Gemara then. Amar Rabba Bar Chinana, or Chanina. Rabba Bar Chinana said, Saba, the old one, Mishmei de Rav, in the name of Rav. Kol Shaloi Amar Emes V'Yatziv Shachris. If a person didn't say Emes V'Yatziv in the morning, the Emes V'Amuna Arvis, in Emes and Amuna in the evening, Lo Yotze Yedei Chayvasa, he hasn't fulfilled his obligation. Shenemar, as it says, Lahagid Baboiker Chastecha, to say, to tell in the morning your kindness, to talk about Hashem's kindness in the morning. V'Amunascha Baleilos, and your faith in the evening. And so Rabbah is telling us that there is a hint in the Shabbos Psalm. This is this Psalm that we say for Shabbos, Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos. In it, it mentions about mentioning Hashem's praise in the morning and Hashem's faith in the evening, either faith in Hashem or the point is that this is hinted to in that pasuk in the Shabbos Psalm. And what is it referring to? He's saying it refers to the after blessing of the Shema. The blessings after the Shema is hinted to from this verse in the Psalms. Now, how does it hint to this? How are we seeing this in the Psalm that talks about kindness and it talks about faith? How does that connect with the blessing of the Shema that we say after the Shema in the morning and in the evening? So this, we're going to look at Rashi. Rashi here, 5 lines up from the bottom of the page, Rashi says, Shenemar lahagid baboker chastecha. In the morning, we're talking about Hashem's kindness. Uberchas emes v'yatziv kula al chesed she'asa im aveseinu. The blessing of emes v'yatziv is on the complete blessing of emes v'yatziv is on the kindness that Hashem did with our forefathers. Shehoitzieh mimitzrayim. He took them out of Egypt. Uvaka lehem hayam, and he split the sea, which is this week's parsha. He split the sea, ve'haviram, and he passed them through the sea. Uberchas emes ve'amuna, and the evening blessing, which is emes ve'amuna, that blessing medaber ba afal hoasidois. It's talking about the future. She'anu mitzapim, we are hoping for, we are awaiting, we are looking forward. She'yakayim lanu havtachosai, Hashem will fulfill his promise, the emunasai, in his faith, legalenu, to redeem us, miyad melachim, from the hands of kings, miyad aritzim, from the hands of oppressors, velosum nafshenu b'chayim, and to place our soul in life, ulahadrichenu al bamai soivenu, and to lead us on the platforms of our enemies, over the high places of our enemies, that Hashem is going to put us, he's going to save us from all of the tzaras, kol eila hanisim hatadirim tamid, all these miracles that are often, that are common, that Hashem constantly does for us. So we are thanking Hashem for that. And then, and so the morning bracha is thanking Hashem for the past. The night bracha is thanking Hashem for all the future salvations. And therefore, it fits with this verse that we talk about the kindness of Hashem, which means the past kindness. And the Amunah is the trust that we know and we're confident that Hashem is going to help us in the future. So now when you recite that bracha on Shabbos, you'll have in mind the things of the past and the miracles of the future. So if a person doesn't say that, he didn't fulfill his obligation, meaning that that a person, it doesn't mean you don't fulfill the obligation of Shema. You fulfilled your obligation of Shema, but if you don't say this, you don't fulfill the obligation as the rabbis established it to say Shema with this blessing. You haven't fulfilled it according to the way the rabbis have told us to say it, to recite that bracha. Now, Tosfos is bothered with, he doesn't ask this as a question, but you see from the wording of Tosfos here, Tosfos is bothered with the fact that at the end of that bracha, it talks about the redemption from Egypt at the night. So the Gemara said that the night, the way Rashi explained it and the way Tosfos understands it, is that the night we're talking about the future, the trust we have that Hashem is going to save us for the future. Well, what do you mean? At night, we talk about the redemption, and we even conclude Baruch Atah Hashem Go'al Yisrael, which is the past tense. He redeemed Israel. Again, in the Shemona Esrei, we say Goyel Yisrael, who redeems Israel. That's about the future. We're asking Hashem for salvation. But the bracha Go'al Yisrael, both in the morning and in the evening, before the Shemona Esrei, before the Amidah, that blessing is past tense. Go'al Yisrael, who redeemed Israel. That bracha is on the past. So what does the Gemara mean that the evening blessing of Shema is all about the miracles of the future? It might talk also about that, but it ends with the blessing of Go'al Yisrael, of the past. So Tosfos explains, based on another Gemara, that whenever you have a long bracha, you sum up the conclusion of the bracha right before the end. So if the end is Go'al Yisrael, thanking Hashem for the past, so we add a little about the past in the text of the bracha, and then conclude Go'al Yisrael. Now, in the beginning of the bracha, it's all about the future. But the idea of the bracha, the way it ends, is about the past. And therefore, right at the end, we also have to add a little about the past. It's called Me'ein HaChasima. The bracha, we always add a little about how it's going to end, similar to the ending, which is similar to the Havdalah blessing, where we sort of get sidetracked a little in the Havdalah blessing, and then we get back to the conclusion. Let me pull up the Havdalah blessing, and let me get a siddur here. The Havdalah blessing, the way it concludes, is Mavdil ben Kodesh L'choil. Then we say Ben Or L'choishech, Ben Yisrael Oamim. So we're getting sidetracked a little. Ben Yisrael Oamim, the Jews and the Goyim, or L'choishech, night and day. So now we conclude at the end, Ben Yom HaShviyi L'Sheshes Yemei HaMasa. Between the seventh day Shabbos and the weekday, then we say Baruch Hashem Mavdil ben Kodesh L'choil. So we conclude at the end, similar to the end bracha, even though we got a little sidetracked in the middle of the bracha, it jumps around to, a little more ideas of separation, but not exactly Shabbos and weekday, or l'choshech, night and day, But it goes back before it ends. It concludes. So the same thing as the bracha of Shema, that it does go back to the bracha of Go'al Yisrael. It talks about the past, so it talks a little about the redemption from Egypt and so on. It talks about that as well.
Rabbi, can I ask you something? You're saying that the blessings allude to the past and the future, but what about the present?
Good question.
Well,
isn't now more important?
What do you think?
Very good question.
How would you answer that question?
I have always been told that the now is the most, what happens now and what you do now has to be the most important. The past and the future, the past is past. The future we don't know. But what we do now it's critical.
Mm-hmm.
So, good point. The thing is, what does it mean now? This second already, you can't pray for this second because the second happened already. You can only pray for the next second. So that's already the future. The moment that you're in now, it's already happening. What are you going to pray? It is. It's done. It's over. Everything for the future. In other words, it's all, in a certain sense, prayer doesn't really apply to the second. It applies to the next second. There's the future is in other words, you're comparing the long-term future with the immediate future, which you're calling present. We're calling both future. We're calling the immediate future. We're just what you're calling present. We're calling future. You get what I'm saying? We're talking about the same thing.
I do
You want to pray for now, which you mean today, right? We're calling today future because the moment that we're in, the second that we're in, passed already. But we're talking about the next second and the next hour and the next 10 hours is really what we're calling future. But you could call it present. That's fine. Just the Gemara, the term the Gemara is using, that the commentaries are using is that we're calling this future. But it's really the immediate future.
I understand. Yeah.
It means both. It means the immediate future and the long-term future. Yes, Miranda.
I think it's also important when we bring to mind things from the past that Hashem has blessed the Jewish people with certain miracles or certain blessings or things you remember in your own life, help propel you into the now and the immediate present to have more faith. So perhaps that's another reason to have that past and future thing kind of going on, even though we're in the present. Maybe that would help. It helps me. I don't know if it helps others.
Using the past to help trust in the future. Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To knowing that Hashem has helped you through whatever you may have gone through, as well as the Jewish people, since we're Jewish, will help us in the future, in now and in the future, faith, our emunah, to trust more.
So for sure that's true. I'm not sure if you're answering the question. In other words, maybe what you're saying is the blessing of the past includes the present. Is that what you're saying? Sort of like I mentioned the future includes the present. You're saying that merely the past includes the present. So
it's like a continuum, we're reminding ourselves.
You know what it reminds me? What you're saying reminds me of what we once mentioned maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, about the blessing that it's the blessing of the, it says we're supposed to connect the Shemona Esrei blessing, the Amidah prayer, with the blessing of Goal Yisrael, with the blessing of the past. Why do we connect the two? So one of the commentaries, Rabbeinu Yoina, said one of his explanations was that by speaking about, thinking about the miracles that Hashem took us out of Egypt, it gives us confidence in the future. In anything that we ask, we know Hashem will do it because he did all those miracles. So the reason to connect Lismoich Geula L'Tfila, to connect the redemption with prayer, is in order to beautify the prayer with our confidence. Because when we talk about the redemption from Egypt, we are now enhancing our confidence in Hashem because we saw all the past miracles that he did. So it's now infusing the prayer with a feeling of confidence and trust and full-fledged belief, not just a dream, but it's real, it's reality. So we're beautifying the prayer. That's why we connect the Geula to Tefillah. So it's along the lines of what you're saying. But here we're talking about the blessing after the Shema. And we're saying that it's the morning blessing emphasizes the past miracles, when the evening blessing emphasizes, it has emphasis on the future, and that's why it calls it emunah. So the Gemara, the next Gemara now says, "V'amar Rabba bar Chinana Saba," another statement, Mishmei de Rav, in the name of Rav. Hamispalel, person that prays, Keshahu Kaireya, when he bows, and this is talking about in the Shemona Esrei, when he bows, which is there's 4 places in the Shemona Esrei where a person bows. Keshahu Kaireya Kaireya bebaruch. When he bends at the word baruch. Ukshahu zoykef, when he stands erect, upright, zoykef b'shem. He stands up with the name of Hashem. Amar Shmuel, my time. Shmuel says, what is the reason for this? Why do you stand upright when you say Hashem's name? Because it says Hashem zoykef kefufim, Hashem straightens the bent. And so when you stand up, you're also bringing to mind the thankfulness we have to Hashem that he gives us the ability to straighten up. And it uses that term in a bracha, Hashem zoykef kefufim, in a verse, in a pasuk. So therefore, we follow that idea, and when we bow during the 4 times we're supposed to bow in the Shemona Esrei, we're supposed to bow down 4 times. The way to do it is to bow at the word Baruch, but stand up at the word Hashem. And the Gemara now asks a question from a verse. The verse says, the Gemara says, Meisvei, let us, they asked a contradiction because it says in a verse, Mipnei Shemi, before my name, Nichasu, a person should be humble.
Right.
And here you're telling me to stand upright. Upright is a sign of more arrogance or confidence. And you're telling me that by Hashem you should bend? That's a sign of humility. You said the verse says nichasu, it should be more humility, and so how could you stand? So the Gemara answers miksiv bishmi. Does it say at my name you should be humble? It says before my name, mipnei shemi, before, in front of my name, you should be humble. Mipnei shmiksiv. So that means that before you come to my name, you should act humble. And when you mention my name, you should stand upright. And this is fitting with what we just taught, that the way you bow at Baruch, but when you come to Hashem, you're standing upright. Amar le Shmuel l'Chia barav. Shmuel told Chia barav, Bar Uriah, student of the Torah. That's how he called him. He said Bar Uriah, or scholar maybe. Ta ve'ema, come and let me tell you. Ve'ema l'cha milsa ma'alyasa. I'll tell you something nice. The Amar avoch, that your father had said. So I'm going to tell you something from your father. Hachi Amar avoch. This is what your father said. Keshehu kaireya, when a person bows, kaireya bebaruch, he should bow at the word baruch. Keshehu zaykev, when he stands upright, zaykev b'shem, he's supposed to stand upright at Hashem's name. When he says Hashem's name, you should stand upright. Now we turn the page. Yud Beis Amud Beis, we're on page 12b. Rav Sheshes, he kara kechizra. Rav Sheshes, when he would bow down like a stick. Which means that he would bow down fast. And just like a person banging something with a stick, you do it fast. And when you're zakif, because zakif, when a person stands upright, Zakif kechivya, you stand upright like a snake, which means that you slowly come up.
Oh, I see.
It shouldn't look like the bowing was a burden, but you look like a snake where you're slowly moving your head upward. And that is the way Rav Sheshet explained how a person should bow.
With dignity.
You're not being arrogant, by the way, when you.
What were you saying, Susan?
He's in the Stein, in the
Yeah, the Steinsaltz.
lifting himself slowly, demonstrating that the awe of God was upon him in the manner that he bowed and stood upright. In other words, I think that's a beautiful way of saying, of explaining physically how to demonstrate.
I think it's an indication of having dignity when they do it, not jerky and
Right.
stiff,
Right.
but or sudden or abruptly, but
Right.
slowly and with definition of purpose, with dignity.
Susan, does it say a source that this shows fear of heaven? That's a nice explanation. Thank you so much for mentioning it. I don't have a Steinsaltz, so what, if you ever see anything good, we really appreciate any additions or anything I don't mention. If any of you find anything interesting in the art scroll or anything, feel free to share it. Does it say? I'm just wondering if it has a source. Does it say a source?
Sounded to me like that's how she was describing it.
Yeah, but there's another word in parentheses.
Yeah.
Habon, Habonch, and the B is capitalized. I don't know what that exactly means, unless it's referring to another brocha, another blessing. I'm not really sure.
Habonch.
I'm sorry. HA, the H is capitalized.
Yeah.
And then it's B, a capital B, but it's one word. BONCH.
EH.
I'm sorry, EH. My God.
Haboneh. Oh, okay. I think that's a book.
Okay.
Okay, very nice. Okay, I think that's a source. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the book, but yeah, I think I've heard.
I'll look it up anyway. I will look it up.
Yeah. Okay, very nice. Okay, so we're going to continue with the next Gemara. Another statement from the same Rabbah. This Rabbi Rabbah, this Rabbi is we're bringing a number of statements from him. So it started off. He started off talking about the blessings of Shema. Now we jump to another statement of his that had to do with the bowing. Now we're going to talk about another statement of his that has to do with the wording of the Shemona Esrei. So Amar Rabba Bar Chinana Saba Mishmei Rabba, son of Chinana, the old. It said in the name of Rav, Kol Hashana Kula, a whole year round. Adam Mispalel HaKel HaKadosh, a person, when he says the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, he says the words HaKel HaKadosh, Melech Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat. A person says these words in the Shemona Esrei. These are the blessings, two of the blessings that are going to be changed on between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We change them. The two blessings during the year, we say Hakel HaKadosh and Melech Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat. Chutz, except for Me'asara Yomim Shebein Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim, from the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Shemispalel, that a person says, a person prays, and doesn't say the exact same words. He says Hamelech HaKadosh v'Hamelech HaMishpat. Instead of saying Hakel, HaKadosh, the holy God, we say the God of kingship, the king, the holy king. And we say, instead of saying Melech Oyev Tzedako, but the king who loves righteousness and justice, we say Hamelech HaMishpat, the king of justice. And the point is that between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is the time when Hashem's kingship is revealed. Hashem is revealing his kingship to the world. He is judging the world, and therefore we emphasize that in the prayers. Rabbi Elazar says, Afilu Amar Hakel HaKodesh Yotza. Even if a person says Hakel HaKodesh, he has fulfilled his obligation, and he would not have to go back and repeat the Shemona Esrei. Shenamar, as it says, Vayigba Hashem tzavokos b'mishpat. It says in a verse in Isaiah that Hashem was exalted in judgment. V'hakel hakodesh nikdash b'tzedakah, and the holy God is sanctified with righteousness. When Amosai, so the Gemara explains, when is Hashem exalted in judgment? Amosai v'yib Hashem tzvokis b'mishpat. When is that? That's Asara Yomim, Elu Asara Yomim. These are the 10 days, Shemay Rosh Hashanah v'ad Yom Kippur, from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. V'ka'amar, and it says in the same verse, Hakel HaKodesh. In that same verse where it's talking about Hashem being king, it says the words Hakel HaKodesh. Sounds like a good proof that even during the 10 days between Hashem and Yom Kippur, you can say, if you said it, it's okay. Fine, the rabbis established to say Hamelach HaKodesh, but if you didn't, it seems like it's fine. So, my Havi Allah. So, what is the din? What is the halacha if you mess up?
In the Stein, it says here, this appellation sufficiently underscores God's transcendence, and there is no need to change the standard formula. The Gemara, what is the conclusion that was reached about this halasha?
Okay. So the question is, what is the proper way to say it? And the Gemara is in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In other words, we know how it's said during the year. So Amar Reb Yosef says, Hakel HaKadosh u'melach ohev tzedakah mishpat, that a person could say Hakel HaKadosh and melach ohev tzedakah mishpat. And Rabba says, HaMelach HaKadosh v'HaMelach HaMishpat. You're supposed to say that Hashem is king, emphasize that. You're supposed to change it to HaMelach HaKadosh, HaMelach HaMishpat. The Hilchasa Karabba, and the halacha follows Rabba. So, to what extent does the halacha follow Rabba? Does that mean preferably a person should say these, but if he messed up, he doesn't have to repeat Shemona Esrei? Or does it mean in the case where you said the wrong thing, you have to repeat Shemona Esrei? There are two ways of reading this. The halacha is like Rabbah. What is Rabbah talking about? Is he talking about preferably, or is he talking about in the final situation where you said it wrong, you might have to repeat it? So here, Tosfos goes through a little discussion, and the Tosfos starts out saying that you have to say Hamelach HaKadosh, Hamelach HaMishpat, and if you messed up, you have to repeat it. And Tosfos says, in the other additions also you would have to repeat, like Zochreinu L'chaim. There are many additions that we recite between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and you would have to repeat Shemona Esrei. Why? Because you changed from the way the rabbis set up the exact wording of the prayers. And Tosfos brings a halacha from Rabbeinu Yehuda that if you're not sure if you said it right, you got to repeat Shemona Esrei. So if you messed up, or if you didn't mess up, you might have messed up. You got to repeat Shemona Esrei. Now, then he says that Rabbeinu V'rach, the Rabbeinu Hananel, or on the side it says V'ram, Rabbeinu Moshe, he says that you don't have to repeat Shemona Esrei from all those things because it's not, of course, a person should say it right, but it doesn't affect the scenario post facto. If you already said the wrong thing, you wouldn't have to go back. Now, the halacha follows that by Hakel HaKadosh, you do have to go back if you said Hakel HaKadosh. And however, the other things you don't have to repeat. And with Hamelach HaMishpat, it is an argument if you have to go back or not, because Hamelach HaMishpat, you really say Melach Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat, you say the right words. So Hamelach HaMishpat is a little more lenient than Hamelach HaKadosh, where you said the wrong word. You said Hakel HaKadosh instead of Hamelach HaKadosh. That's the halacha. But the other things, if you missed out, you don't have to repeat Shemona Esrei at all for. And when it comes to Hamelach HaMishpat, because it's an argument, it does mention in Shulchan Aruch that a person should try to say an extra Shemona Esrei and have an additional Shemona Esrei where they add some, where they say it correctly, even though you wouldn't be 100% obligated to repeat Shemona Esrei, but you should say an extra Shemona Esrei as a donation Shemona Esrei, as a nedava, it's called, an extra Shemona Esrei. Okay, that's the conclusion of this Gemara. I want to wish all of you a very good Shabbos.